Yeah. Okay. So what's this all about? So Sustainable Fashion Ventures is currently completing a Series A capital raise. I'm working with the wholesale investor team at Capital HQ to complete that raise. And through that portal, I've made contact with a number of groups. The brokers or the people who are out there assisting me to source finance more often than not have asked, what's this all about? Now, I've obviously done the 7-minute pitch deck, and that's a very short, sharp corporate, what are we doing? Why are we doing it? Return on investment, 2-year plan, all that sort of good stuff. It doesn't really give you a sense of why, what's this all about? So if I was to describe the two discussions, the Series A one that you've probably already viewed, 7-minute long pitch, that's really coming from the brain. This one's coming from the heart. Proceed with caution. So, going green. I've travelled the world. I've swum in the ocean north of Inverness. I've bodyboarded east of Umhlanga, climbed Kota Kinabalu, the Himalayas, the Atlas Mountains. I've fished, I've hunted, I've done extraordinary things. I've enjoyed this planet. And I think it's important that the next generation does too. Going green isn't, some people really want to push in your face ideas, right? I think going green's just about all of us making good decisions every day. If you can find a mode of transport that's more fuel efficient, go for it. If you can wear clothing that's recyclable, you should. So that's that. A bit about me and my career. So got into technology, and I guess if you were to say what I do and what I contribute, which is sort of my unique contribution, I'm a technologist who's built a career in sales. So I started with IBM Corporation, and they put me through their global sales school. Honed those skills over 5 years with IBM, got into Oracle Corporation, became a deal maker with Coffee International, built and sold a telecommunications company, rejoined Oracle, and I was about 34. I had a $335 million sales target. I was an exec director of a company that I eventually turned around, and an opportunity came my way to be a trade delegate to China for blockchain. Blockchain is a powerful technology that can solve a number of significant issues in society today. And China wanted to talk to Australia about that. And that's really where, over the course of my career, my interest in sustainability was truly piqued. Atlas Mountains. So, trade delegation. A group of us went up there for a couple of weeks, and we got to meet, or I certainly got to meet, chief executive officers from China. I got to meet the government and hear from the government the various programs that they were running to foster entrepreneurship. And I guess the blockchain joke that we all sort of enjoyed was China annually imported about 1 million litres of French red wine, but the domestic consumption in China exceeded 60 million. And the Chinese government wanted to sort of stamp out counterfeiting and all these sort of all these issues associated with basically people pretending something is something it's not. But I didn't come away from that trade delegation thinking about the integrity of the French wine in China. I came away thinking, wow, China has just urbanized 1 billion people in the blink of an eye. They've built 1,600 coal-fired power plants. They had immense systems going into these mega cities, and there was huge inputs and there was huge outputs. And obviously, the one that obviously concerned me was waste. And yeah, I didn't immediately jump on sustainable fashion at that point in time, but for reasons I'll allude to in due course, an opportunity arose and I got into it. So back to school. Back to school. So came to the completion of my role with Oracle Corporation. We successfully launched the public cloud in Australia, turned around that public company, which was an Oracle partner, completed the trade delegate work, and I was pretty exhausted. To be completely transparent, I was knackered. I'd done 53 full itineraries in 1 year. Half of those were international, and I needed a break, and I decided to engage in an MBA. So back to school, and this is really where I got the time and the space to put some frameworks around my thinking and really look at the environmental issues that I'd identified through that trade delegation, and subsequent to that through research, just at the desktop level. So I got into the MBA. The first 12 months of the MBA was really reflecting on my career. If you look at the subjects, it's very much the Porter model, basically. And but yeah, the particular bent to MBA that I did was entrepreneurial management, which is obviously, like I was saying, gave me the space and the time to formulate some ideas regarding sustainability and how I might turn that into a venture. And cotton's an interesting thing. So I'd come across, I guess, cotton. Well, we all knew as kids growing up, cotton was a thirsty crop, and second probably only to rice in Australia. I hadn't really seen much of cotton since then. I knew that when I was in Mali and Africa, they had programs there to sort of improve particularly the working environment for cotton workers. But coming into this MBA and thinking about sustainability and obviously looking at how to make it a venture, I wanted to keep my efforts close to Australia's primary industries. I kind of formed the view that if I did that at the end of the MBA, I could work with groups in Australia to potentially export these ideas and these products, and that's certainly where it's ended up. So cotton in Australia, world class, really has over the last 20 years progressed dramatically. Taking cotton and trying to turn it into a sustainable venture, fashion was the obvious place to start. The fashion industry was heavily critical both of itself, and there were external parties critical of it as it relates to sustainability for waste and for microplastics. So when I looked into if I was to disrupt this industry, what were the major things I could solve? Microplastics probably is the issue that no one really is talking about, but is far and away the largest issue. Waste, which I'll talk to later in this presentation. During my MBA, I got quite deep on waste, and I found some workshops in the United States had been completed, and they formed the view in the United States that exporting secondhand garments to the emerging economies was a flawed strategy, and it didn't achieve results. Essentially, it just moved the problem; it didn't solve the problem. As I guess we've all probably come to that conclusion as well. So the MBA challenge. Australian cotton, what are we going to do with it? We're going to solve some pretty serious issues in the fashion industry, and again, if you look at the fashion industry, I think I talked to this in the Series A pitch deck. There's really two main markets. There's denim and everything else. I formed the view that denim's going to be easier to solve because with one portfolio of materials, you can address well over 50% of the waste challenge. So just to communicate how I approach this and the way that I sort of broke up the immense challenge of thinking through sustainable fashion for 8 billion people on the planet, I came up with three kind of large portfolios of work: brands, marketplace, and supply chain. I thought about, if you look through the MBA process to the completion point, you need to do a project, and I wanted to do something very, very tangible as part of that for that project. So within the denim garment portfolio, there's really two main categories: trucker jackets and jeans. I decided to focus on trucker jackets as I had some positive experiences throughout my life with them, and I wanted to use that trucker jacket from the farm right through to recycling as like the way to measure sustainability. I hope that makes sense, and I'm sure it will, shortly. So let's jump into brands, then marketplace and supply chain. I think you'll follow my thinking. So heavy D. So I got into it, and just learning about denim, found that there were international standards that denim is actually milled to, and the standard in the United States was standard 6654 heavy denim. This was quite funny because when I went to school as a kid, I was called Heavy D because of my weight training passion. So Heavy D was the brand, it sort of was a nice fit. And I got into learning about denim trucker jackets. So I cut denim, sewed denim, constructed these jackets from scratch. I worked out how to wash denim for color and patina, distressing denim. And as you can see here, when my skills sort of developed to a really good standard, painting denim, embroidering denim, and yeah, getting to know everything that there is to know really about a denim jacket. What you're looking at there, everyone's going to see something different, but I see planes, motorcycles, and cars. And just let me talk you through that. So when I was going through this learning process about denim jackets, and I was looking into the culture that surrounds them and the various things people have done to these garments to make them heavily personalized and obviously valuable to them. Painting, embroidery, and patches were the sort of the three major kind of groups of ways that people made personal the garment. So I started with paint, and I thought, well, what do I want to paint on this jacket, right? And I had my grandfather on my father's side was a bomber pilot, and they used to paint on the nose cone of their aircraft, kind of attractive, provocative-looking girls with kind of cool slogans, perhaps. And so I got into, okay, well, maybe sort of think back at that sort of phase of my family history. I'll get into the nose cone art on the back of a denim jacket. Found out very quickly I'm a terrible artist, and I engaged a street artist, graffiti artist, whatever you want to call that sort of a person. And we started working on a range of these jackets. And I learned about, painting on denim is not as straightforward as you might think. It's quite a thirsty material. You got to layer the paint, very, very tricky, but an exciting and fun thing to do. Embroidery, this was very much more my style. Embroidery is quite mathematical, believe it or not. I bought a package from Wilcom in Sydney, which is a software-based package which you can use to set up your design files, which you then load into the embroidery machine. I've done all these myself without the assistance of any third parties. I taught myself embroidery from scratch. And like I was saying, planes, motorbikes, and cars. I've got an uncle who's a mad keen vintage Indian motorcycle collector. I think he has like the largest private collection in the world. And we used to go around that house as kids, and he had a couple of these bikes in his hallway, and they're just gorgeous bikes. They're very much 3D art. And I just always remembered those scouts and chiefs, and so I figured, well, I'll kind of create that on the back of a jacket. And you can't clearly see the detail, but I'm very, very proud, particularly the feathers. And if you look at the wall paint, that's actually layered embroidery. It's incredibly tricky to do, but a great demonstration of the sort of level I got my skills to. The Cobra on the right, I had a really, really good year at IBM as a sales guy. Bought a 1965 AC Cobra. I always wanted to build a Cobra race team, like the great Carroll Shelby. But the cost of doing a race team needed a few more good years of IBM sales commission checks, and eventually just got put on the shelf as an idea. But it was great to sort of go back to that phase of my life and think about race team and come up with the design you can see here. What's really impressive about that design is it's well over 90 centimeters in length, but completed with a single embroidery file. So they're just anecdotally, that's the largest embroidery hoop in the world. So yeah, very cool. So that's the That was sort of like the brand process. I learned everything there is to learn about the garment, not just its construction from denim, but also the history around it, how people personalize it, that sort of stuff. The only thing you can't see in that picture is, which is important, I guess, is the leather neck patch and, if you gain, the tab. So these are two trademarks which really distinguish the garments from each other, and makes them more than just denim. So the marketplace. So just to sort of set the scene for this next part of the conversation, the marketplace is really where, if you are a brand and you want to sell trucker jackets, or you're a consumer and you want to buy them, how do you meet? In the physical world, you might go to a shopping mall, you might go to a boutique, you might go to some place where, these people are expert at selling this style of garment. But in the online world, that doesn't really exist. But you really want to do all the same sorts of things you do before you buy a jacket, or you would traditionally buy a jacket. So hence the concept of the marketplace was born. No surprise, truckerjacket.com. Truckerjacket.com, it's where supply and demand meets. You have thousands of people going through this site, sold jackets all around the world. And, the process is very much like a store. People come in, they browse, they look at all the different sort of jackets that sort of are of interest to them. They drill down on the jackets that catch their eye. And, there's reviews. I've kind of written some very basic reviews with some photography, and answer the questions that you probably would logically ask in terms of, if you've got a wool line trucker jacket, does the lining go right down the arm? You can't obviously see that from the photos, but if you've got a person there doing a review, you can turn the cuff of the garment inside out, and you can see the lining continues right down the arm. Things like this. So there's the primary reason they come to the store, which is obviously to find a jacket or to sell a jacket. But then there's also, serious questions like, how do I wear this, right? So the concept of the blog was born. In the blog, you can see there's reviews of jackets, there's recommendations on how to style a jacket, how do you wear double denim without being called a hillbilly, all this sort of exciting stuff. And then obviously once you've sort of digested that information, the accessories page is where you go to potentially buy some of those complementary things. Could be a baseball cap, could be a beanie, could be a pair of denim jeans, which obviously the color's different, but an acceptable mix, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So this was the kind of the concept of the marketplace. And through this thought process, I came across the next challenge, which is, well, what if they don't speak English? I mean, if you're selling jackets around the world, there's a high possibility that you're going to be talking to people in Japan and China, and they don't speak English. So this concept of a centralized team and localized digital assets was born, where, using the incredibly powerful platform YouTube, which you'll be no doubt connected to see this content, you can hear from a local person in your language with your accent, reviewing the garment. So for the purposes of this, I've got Chikako and Alexandra and Gillian here doing a review of exactly the same garments in Japanese, English, and Chinese. And funnily enough, they're saying the exact same thing. So I gave them a script. Obviously, Chikako translated that script into Japanese, and I went through the process of talking about the garments. And yeah, it's pretty incredible. So literally 3 people from 3 different cultures. I even put some Japanese whiskey in there, and I think some Chinese rice wine. And, we sort of fleshed out this idea that what does a local salesperson look like selling a jacket online? And that was a really exciting kind of point to reach, where this concept that is universal could be localized. Okay, so coming back a step, brands got to know absolutely everything there is to know, went real deep on denim trucker jackets. Marketplace, it's where supply meets demand. I then thought, okay, well, you know, contemporary concerns run quite deep, and I looked at the supply chain. And this, to be honest, was the real focus of my MBA project. The supply chain, for the first time, certainly, I mean, when I was a trader looking to China, we were talking about the administration of the supply chain, which as a concept was well understood. Everyone kind of talked about chain of custody, but it had never really been done before, not on the scale that I looked at for this MBA project. So this was the master's sort of output. Green tab. So for my sins, I called this thing a green tab. Now, let me just give you some background to this. I think you'll all come to the same conclusion. That is, I didn't go looking for trouble, but trouble certainly found me. My view was this, right? You're a person out there who wants to buy clothing. You know that some clothing is sustainable and some clothing is not. You don't need to go as deep as understanding how microfibers are released into the atmosphere through a braiding of a garment or anything crazy like that. You just want to know that I want to buy clothing without knowing anything about why, and I want to buy clothing that's sustainable. So human beings are mostly visual. I came up with this concept that I'm going to mark the garment with a green tab. Simple idea, simple idea, a lot of trouble. I I got into the supply chain detail for the purpose of that MBA, and I worked with a graphic designer to sort of create these images, phase 1, 2, 3, and 4, of course, being recycling. And I quantified, from a sustainability point of view, the usage of water throughout the supply chain. So if you look at farming, any farmer is going to tell you the same thing. They're going to say that sustainability is obvious as a sort of an investment for them because it means they've increased the yield of their farm. But from a consumer perspective, they're going to say how much water was used in the growing of this cotton crop. So I've worked with CSIRO data to come up with a high, medium, low view on water consumption by crop, and I've applied that benchmark with the other sustainable aspects of insecticides and pesticides through this supply chain. You come to the factory. The simplest way to describe this is there's no point having the world's most the world's most sustainable cotton by water consumption if it comes into a factory and they use twice as much denim to create a garment as any other factory. That waste is a contributing factor to the sustainability of the consumer's garment. So I came up with a simple approach based on my experience visiting factories in emerging economies, where I determined that an efficient factory uses about a 1.25 times amount of material to create a garment. An inefficient factory exceeds 2 times. And really that's waste that's accumulated in the cutting of the fabric, the stitching of the fabric, and from a water perspective, definitely creating the patina on the end product is a really water intensive part of the process. Warehousing, distribution, stores, product, obviously from a sustainability point of view, the considerations there, logistics, you really want to keep product moving outbound. You don't want a lot of it coming back, and that really places emphasis on the quality of your marketplace to get the size right from the original sale. The tab designs. So imagine this: you've just defined the world's most sustainable supply chain for denim. You've got to mark the garments so that people can identify them as having been produced through that supply chain. I then turn my mind to how do I create the most sustainable denims, right? Now, I'm not going to talk to trans dry, just to say that, in my experience climbing mountains and doing all this crazy stuff, there's never really been a cotton-based material that can take sweat away from your body, prevent things like hypothermia at altitude. So when I saw trans dry, I just had to do something with that. But from a denim perspective, these are the 3 interesting things: storm, tough, and stretch. So when you're coming up with this most sustainable product idea, you've got to have some concept of what not sustainable looks like. And microplastics, as I sort of touched on earlier, is the key consideration to think about here. So imagine you're a child going to school, and your mum sees that the rain clouds are overhead, and she tells you to go get your plastic poncho. Well, the sustainable decision that could have been made there would be, hey, look, we shouldn't even own a plastic poncho because it'll probably end up either in landfill or the ocean. What if we put this kid in a 96% water repellent denim trucker jacket? The good news is he'll look cool, and also he will not turn up to school soaking wet. So that is sort of the concept around, well, if we can make denim water repellent with no microplastics, so with no plastics in the material, is that a sustainable thing? Absolutely, it's a sustainable thing. Tough, it's really about durability. One of the key measures of sustainable garments is how long they last. Do they abrade? Do they wear? Do they tear? Um, Jesus, the testing we did on that tough denim, it'll be in your will. That thing will outlast you. We we pulverized the jackets. The control sample was 80% deteriorated. The tough cotton green tab denim samples, in some cases, the beating made them stronger. Just you really need to see that scientific data to believe that. Stretch, I think stretch probably has the most impact potential. Stretch's material replaces the need for elastics in denim. If you think about, the world today, everybody likes to flaunt their athletic bodies. Stretch denim gives them a chance to do that. 100% organic cotton stretch, which is mechanical stretch denim, allows you to do that without any plastics in the material. So by providing that product to consumers, they have a powerful decision to make, which removes plastics and the waste associated with that from their wardrobe. So this was an exciting trip. So Cotton Incorporated invited me up to Bangkok, Thailand, and I attended the Cotton Reimagined conference. And that was probably when I was first aware of, I guess, how special what I'd done is. And, I knew I was at the bleeding edge. Like I said, as a trade delegate to China, I was very familiar with exactly where industry was, going through that MBA process and defining things like water usage right from the cotton farm through to the consumer. I knew that was, again, very, very bleeding edge. That had never been done before to that level of detail and rigor. But this is where I found out that the use of these performance technologies on denim was a breakthrough result. And I didn't know that of the 26.5 million people in Australia, I was the only guy who's actually a Cotton Incorporated partner. All that sort of stuff was new to me. So it was a great conference, a great way to kind of close out the MBA process in a very special location, the CM Kempinski Hotel, Bangkok, with a happy, smiling staff. The happy, smiling staff wearing a Nakubra were thrilled to look after me. Recycling, just to touch on this, through Cotton Incorporated, I've made contact with various groups around the world who are leaders in denim recycling. The obvious one in the United States is the Blue Jeans Goes Green campaign. I have, believe it or not, I've sent over 2,500 prepaid recycled denim vouchers to people in America. So I've potentially, if they've actually used them, which I'm sure they would have, I've personally recycled 2,500 kilos of denim through this process. And I think that program could easily be expanded around the world. The alternatives, if you sort of think about clothing, you can hand-me-down clothing. I grew up in a single-income Defence Force family, so I'm very, very familiar with hand-me-down clothing. I can tell you right now, I didn't like getting hand-me-down clothing, but certainly valid as a strategy. You can second-hand clothing in stores, but really, at a certain point, that garment's going to be significantly deteriorated, and you've got to do something with it from a disposal perspective. Landfill's not a good strategy. Emerging economies has been proven to not be a good strategy. So recycling into other products, is the go. Blue Jeans Goes Green recycles denim into insulation, which is a construction material. There are some other people around the world doing sort of similar things, but I think replication of that program in other economies is the obvious answer there. All right, so just to recap where we're at in this ramble. Sort of talked through my career, talked about taking time to do an MBA and really put some structure and rigor around my ideas for sustainability. Through that lens, I took a single product view to prove out the sustainability potential of a world-class supply chain, and then I defined that supply chain as my project. The ultimate goal of that MBA, being an entrepreneurial management MBA, is to launch a digital venture, which I did, and yeah, I work with world-class R&D firms, including Cotton Incorporated and CSIRO, who recognise me as part of this journey. Corporate progress. So basically, the intention of doing all this was to launch a venture and progress a sustainable, progress fashion towards a more sustainable state of affairs. The first hurdle. So this was a surprise to me. I got to tell you, when I got the correspondence from a guy in America saying he was being instructed to litigate me, I was surprised. I'd come across Levi's when I registered the Green Tab wordmark. They had responded to the Green Tab wordmark registration, and then subsequent to their feedback, I responded. Well, I thought I wrote a really, really good answer. So did the US IP attorney. But then we got into this legal shootout where obviously they were expressing a high degree of concern about me and my intentions. And, the judge who listened to the matter obviously agreed that we needed to work this out. So I guess that culminated, we'd done mediations. In fact, I'd dial into a mediation at 3 a.m. in the morning from Bangkok, Thailand, whilst it's at that conference. And we hadn't really been able to get any sort of a result. So I guess it all came to a head January 2024 when I flew up to California, and we had a hearing in San Jose. So, it all kind of made sense when we spoke person to person, which is obviously one of the benefits of litigation. You eventually get to meet somebody who, has got the real issue that you need to solve. And, Levi's and I were able to talk constructively, and we now have, after way too much back and forth with lawyers, an agreement between us where they've sort of got some sacred cows. They know what I'm doing. It's not there's a lot of guys around the world who try to do things with trademarks for the wrong reasons. They've obviously accepted that I am doing things with trademarks for the right reasons. And we've got some formalised dispute resolution processes between the two parties, so that any concerns they have, they come straight to me and I'll solve them. No courts, no lawyers. So we got a great result there in the end, but it was 2 more years stress for me, which I've been actively trying to avoid since the last time I was in court. Just on Los Gatos, absolutely stunning little town in the hills above San Francisco. A really special week spent there. Whilst court's never great, big thanks to the guys at Los Gatos. Oh, exceptional hosts. Series A. So with the Levi Strauss & Co. thing done, the opportunity presented itself to progress the venture with a known risk resolved. So I reached out to Steve Torso, wholesale investor. Steve and I have known each other for years. When I was at Oracle Corporation, I was involved in helping startups. I was also Oracle's corporate representative on the board of Stone and Chalk, which was the peak incubator for financial technology companies. And Steve and his great team, a lot of fun. They are really 10 years ahead of everyone else in Australia when it comes to connecting private money with venture. In the United States, obviously, venture capital, it's far more mature. So I met a guy in Australia, Cameron Blanks, from Pacific Equity Partners, and he talked me through, I guess, the origins of venture capital, the Boston universities, endowment funds being deployed to really bring forward organizations and companies that have not got the capital attention they need to progress to a business outcome, whether that's an exit or liquidity event, whatever that might be. Steve in Australia is probably the leader, certainly is, in my opinion, the leader of this emerging sort of space. Private capital being deployed into venture, wholesale investor. He's kept me on rails. So basically, in Australia, there's certain regulatory things that you can and can't do. People who invest in these sort of ventures need to have minimum assets that they can declare, which in turn gets them a sophisticated investor certificate. And Steve and I have now set up this deal room. His team, Jackie, is helping me through the outbound promotion phase of the Series A raise. Actually, very quickly came to, when I sort of explained it to him, even though I hadn't seen him in probably 4 years, I explained to him what I was doing. Very quickly picked up on the messaging and said, "Look, this is the sort of thing you need to put in front of potential investors, based on his experience." So huge thanks to Steve Torso and the team at Wholesale Investor. Invest. So this is a bit of a longer, more sort of organic conversation today than the Series A pitch, which goes for about 7 short minutes, very short and sharp. But what I wanted to explain is, how have I come at this and why have I come at this? And, really I want to impress upon you, this industry, the fashion industry, needs some effective competition to drive it forward. You might look at everything I've said here and say, of course, everybody else does that. And I'm going to have to say to you, no, they don't. One of the more telling things that came out of that litigation with Levi Strauss & Co., we got the default judgment back from Justice DiMarchi, and basically said, look, Levi's, you can't claim that David's doing any sort of dilution, infringement, or unfair competition because you guys don't recycle clothing. And I think when people read that judgment, they were like, "Did you know this?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I know this because I did an MBA and I looked at the industry and I said, mate, there's a big gap here. And unless I think we get effective competition into this industry, it's not going to be compelled to progress towards sustainable business models." And that's of course led to all the activity I've just talked you through now. But yeah, if you want to come on the journey, everyone's welcome. I think one thing I want to do is create a venture that everybody can participate in. I mean, if you want to come up to the operational headquarters in northern Vietnam, meet the design team, if you want to go see the factory, if you want to get a pair of jeans custom cut, great, get involved. I think this one's going to be a lot of fun. I think doing a good thing in terms of the environment's also really nice to be a part of. There's so much, energy and so much sometimes negative energy around sustainability. This is such a clear path to sustainable business practice. I think we're mad not to take it. Hence why I'm putting the shoulder to the plough and offering to do it myself. So invest. I'll have the link to the deal room in the space below the clip in YouTube. Minimum investment $25,000, and you will be a part of the next chapter of Denim. That's for sure. Thank you.